Welcome back to the channel, guys. Let's get straight into today's story. They tell us Keir Starmer is a safe option, a calm, sensible figure who has rescued Labour from ideological madness and returned it to the political centre. We are repeatedly assured that he represents stability, moderation and competence, a man who poses no real threat to Britain's way of life. But when you strip away the branding and examine what Labour under Starmer actually stands for, a very different picture emerges. Because beneath the careful language and professional presentation lies a political project that is far more radical than most voters realise. Not radical in tone, but radical in effect. This is not about personality, it's about power. And under Keir Starmer, Labour's vision of Britain is one where power flows steadily away from the public and towards the state, managed by institutions that increasingly see democracy as an inconvenience rather than a foundation. Starmer's Labour has made a virtue of being responsible. But responsibility in this context does not mean accountability to voters. It means centralisation. It means decisions being made by experts, regulators and quangos and presented to the public as an unavoidable necessities rather than political choices. Debate is replaced by management. Consent is assumed rather than earned. Nowhere is this clearer than in Labour's approach to free speech. Increasingly, speech is framed not as a fundamental liberty but as a risk to be mitigated. Words are treated as potential harm, opinions as threats to social cohesion. The solution is never more debate or stronger arguments, but regulation and control. Once speech is defined as dangerous, restricting it becomes a moral duty rather than an authoritarian act. The same mindset applies to protest and public dissent. Labour shows little appetite for rolling back the expanding powers used to restrict demonstrations and criminalise disruption. Protest under this framework is acceptable only when it is polite, controlled and easily ignored. Anything that genuinely pressures those in power is redefined as illegitimate. Dissent is tolerated only so long as it changes nothing. On the economy, Starmer insists Labour has abandoned socialism, but what has really been abandoned is transparency. While outright nationalism may be limited, the state is positioned as the ultimate manager of economic life. Energy, housing, employment and transport are all framed as problems requiring central oversight, regulation and direction. The individual is steadily sidelined while bureaucratic authority expands. This model is neither free market nor traditionally socialist. It is technocratic, governance by experts rather than representatives, power exercised through regulators rather than parliament, decisions made behind closed doors and justified after the fact as evidence-based. And crucially, it is a system that insulates itself from public pressure by removing meaningful choices from democratic control. Starmer himself reflects this approach. As a former director of public prosecutions, his instincts are procedural and managerial. Politics is treated as an administrative exercise rather than a contest of ideas. Problems are processed, not debated. Opposition is managed, not engaged. Democracy becomes a technical process rather than a living relationship between the public and those who govern. Supporters argue this makes him competent, but competence without accountability is not a virtue. Efficiency without consent is not freedom. A system that prioritises order over liberty ends up treating the public as something to be managed rather than represented. Immigration policy reveals the same pattern. While Labour's rhetoric has toughened slightly, the underlying assumptions remain untouched. High levels of migration are treated as inevitable and largely beyond democratic control. Concerns about wages, housing pressure, public services and social cohesion are acknowledged briefly, then quietly set aside. The public is expected to adapt, accept and remain reasonable. Those who don't are dismissed, not argued with, but categorised. Their concerns reframed as moral failings rather than legitimate grievances. In technocratic systems, disagreement is not something to be resolved through politics. It is something to be neutralised. This is where the real danger lies. A political movement that believes it knows better than the public will eventually stop listening to them altogether. This is where the real danger lies. A political movement that believes it knows better than the public will eventually stop listening to them altogether. Once dissent is treated as a problem, limits disappear. The state expands, justifications follow, and freedoms are eroded quietly, piece by piece. This is why the label moderate is so misleading. Moderation is not about sounding calm or wearing a suit, it's about restraint. It's about recognising that there are limits to what the state should control, regulate or manage. Starmer's Labour shows little interest in those limits. Instead, it offers a Britain governed by rules rather than choice, by institutions rather than people, a country where political decisions happen above your head, and your role is to comply and not participate, not through force but through procedure. So is Keir Starmer an enemy of the state? Well, that depends on what you believe the people are for. If the public exists to be guided, corrected and managed, then his approach makes sense. But if democracy means popular sovereignty, scepticism and the right dissent, then Labour's direction under Starmer should worry anyone who values liberty over control. Because the most profound political changes do not come from radicals shouting in the streets. They come from calm men in suits, telling you that it's all been done for your own good. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want more honest political commentary and don't want to miss what's really happening behind the headlines, hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments below.